Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this special webinar on the year of the Entrepreneurial Lawyer. I've been looking forward to this webinar for a long time. I've got with me two very distinguished personalities who I'm very excited to talk to today. My name is Nigam. I'm the Dean of the BML Munjal Law School, and I'm the moderator for this webinar. I have with me here Mr. Ritwik Lucas and Ms. Rupa Gosain, two personalities who will take us through the landscape of education and law, respectively. The reason I am delighted to be in this company is because we are trying to probe, by using various perspectives, the future career options that our students have in a world where technology, and innovation and entrepreneurship is really changing the very landscape of our profession and of our careers. So it's in this context that we have started this webinar series, and the law school is just one part of it. And what we're trying to do here is we are trying to seek various perspectives from personalities who've already made a mark in their respective fields and see what their advice is to our aspiring students and their parents, of course. So what I'll do is this is going to be a free-flowing conversation. I'll be asking them questions during this by turn. And through their answers, I want to weave a story of what it means to be an entrepreneurial lawyer and what it means for students who are aspiring to enter into the legal profession today. So Ritwik is a famous lawyer and entrepreneur. He has made his mark in legal practice and in legal consulting, and also in recruiting high quality lawyers for a variety of domains. Ms. Rupa Gosain is an accomplished educationalist, has got her experience in domain in various areas substantively, as well as internationally and domestically in terms of geography. She's the principal of the GEMS Education School in Karnal. I'll start by asking Ritwik a question about your journey, Ritwik, a little bit as a lawyer and also as a person who has, in some ways, chartered new paths in legal practice and entrepreneurship. And then I'll do something similar when I come to Ms. Gosain as well. Ritwik, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Nigam. Thank you to the BML Munjal University for setting up this conversation and for inviting me. I'll actually start with kind of some childhood stories. I was kind of always looking for ways to supplement my pocket money. So even as a kid, I'd find ways of, putting on a show, selling tickets. My dad would come back from trips, mix shampoo and like try and sell it, when someone's waiting for an auto. So that bit was there kind of early on as a kid. And I think I lost it, I think through the regiment of school, and college, right? And I think the great thing is, especially when I got to NLS, for me, getting to NLS was actually more important than actually studying law. I wanted the environment of, being among that group of people and the terrible water that we have in Nagarbavi. But it was really, I think, the great thing with law school was that so much of the law school life was up to the students to create. We kind of, hostels, as you know, Professor Nigam kind of, was run by pretty much, by the students, the mess, the committees, we would raise money, recruitment, I think famously, the institution was against kind of campus recruitment, and the early batches paved the way, and so there was a lot of space to really kind of take responsibility, and that is really kind of what stayed with me. And really, I think if we look at kind of a lot of our friends and network within not just NLS but others as well, I think this is one hallmark. Because ultimately, to me, entrepreneurship is about taking responsibility and to create your own little world, right? To create your impact on the world. That's what it kind of comes down to. Post law school, I was at Amarchand, Bombay for a few years. Did corporate law, structured finance. Very, very busy time. Loved it. Worked with great people. But for me personally, I realized that that's not the kind of success that I wanted for myself. Right? I didn't want to be a partner in a large firm. And I was very fortunate to reconnect with again old friends from law school, where we set up kind of the first venture that I was part of called Rainmaker. And then subsequently in 2011, we set up Vahora and then now Counselect, which I co-lead as well.
Right. Thank you, Ritik, for that introduction. And I'll pick up on that thread a little bit later. So you made some very intriguing statements, as you usually do, and about entrepreneurship being something akin to taking responsibility. I've actually not seen those two connections being made earlier. So it's a very, very interesting connection you made, and let's pick up on that a bit later. Can I invite Ms. Rupa Gosain to talk a little bit about herself, her journey as an educationalist, and her view of where students are today. We are in very strange times, as we can see, all of us. But it's also, I suppose, an exciting and a challenging time for students in today's world. So over to you, Ms. Rupa.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nigam, for inviting me here for this wonderful discussion. Yes, as a journey as an educationist has been very, very exciting and edifying through nearly more than 2 decades now. And it's been across cultures and across age groups and the length and breadth of India and abroad. And one thing I've understood that students and children are the same across cultures. No matter what the time span, they remain the same. And as educationists, we have a great responsibility in giving them the right platform so they become integrated individuals in the society and take it forward. Take it forward is the most important underlying thing that I want to stress on. Regarding careers, I feel now things are changing. There's a huge shift in perspectives and the way society has evolved and changed. Even in our schools now, it is more now a student-centric, a child-based education, which everybody is looking at and doing. With that comes the, inside the child comes the I. The I is being celebrated in every child. And with that, what happens is the child is able to make choices. And with the choices come more options. And with more options, the child is able to, now is looking at what works for him or her and in what is he or she in sync with. Like Ritvik rightly pointed out, he didn't want a career in a corporate because he was sinking in with what works for him. And I think that is what is happening in every school now, in every child, the syncing of what they want to do. So that leads us not to the the typical careers that had been there in the previous generation. The Z generation, this particular generation, is looking for what works for them. And the second change that has happened in society is the shift from security to risk taking. This is another mind shift that has happened. So students now no longer want a job which is kind of makes them very secure, but they want to experiment and explore what works for them. So with that, I think the careers that we are going to have in the future are going to be more there maybe one individual have 3 or 4 careers, and he can start over maybe like a doctor or a lawyer like Ritvik did, and maybe branch out to be something like a life coach or a voice artist, or maybe a political campaign manager. God knows, there are so many of these fields available now. And with the advent of technology and the push with technology, I'm sure a lot of job opportunities are there. So there is no one typical career that was there in the Indian mindset. Now things are changing.
I think that's an excellent input for the session, Ms. Gosain. I think it's important to realize how not just the substantive ecosystem, but the mindsets of the students have changed because of the way they are being taught, and the way their aspirations and their ambitions are being shaped in the school itself through the curriculum, through the kind of choices they've got, etc. And that actually brings me to an interesting inflection point, so to speak, because then maybe we should connect that, the idea that students are now at a stage in their lives when they are more open to risk and more open to various options, much unlike what it was when in our times when we were in school. But what does that mean, Ritvik? I should ask you that, because you said that there is entrepreneurship in the air, but that means a lot of responsibility. So this session, as we know, is about entrepreneurial lawyers, and of course some connection with that to the kind of disruption that technology has brought in. So I want to kind of slowly take you through those various elements of the session that I think are quite important, that you alluded to in your introductory talk here. So let's start with this idea of entrepreneurship, and how did you kind of get into this this idea here and this way of doing things, and what do you understand by it? You gave us some very intriguing hints when you first spoke, so I wanted to kind of take that forward and tell us more about it.
So I think there are some phrases kind of that capture that the spirit of entrepreneurship. For example, one common one that's used is to take something from 0 to 1, right? So to be able to create something virtually out of nothing, where nothing exists, but to create something. So entrepreneurship is fundamentally it's a creative step. Second, like I mentioned, it's about taking responsibility through that creation process to really shape whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's an organization, whether it's a culture. You're shaping all of that. And today, as we know, we're doing this call on Zoom. We're sitting in different parts of the country. Every activity is touched by technology virtually, and especially every business activity, every company today is a software company in some way, right? So I put those three things together just as an overarching space. And just, since I have you, Professor Nigam, and Ms. Rupa on the call as educators, one thing I just like to share is sometimes, I think what's really important is to create a space where entrepreneurship mindset can kind of start to take root and start to kind of flower. Where, because today, like when I visit a lot of law schools and speak to young folks as well. Most education institutions, kind of everything is so spoon-fed and so like structured, right? Those free spaces of where students can kind of take responsibility, those spaces to create, those opportunities to create. I don't know if it's shrinking, but it should be expanded. Right? And I think that's a great role that educators can play in leaving some spaces open for that to happen. So in the law school context, it would be, not just kind of whether it's raising money for Ligala, but we create something new, right? So we set up the endless debate. So something new happening all the time, right? Within that campus, and even now. I'll just pause there.
No, that's excellent. Yeah, I think that's right. I think the spirit of entrepreneurship needs to be inculcated and nurtured throughout. We do that a little bit, by the way, at the university. At our university, we have a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and we have incubators. But that's the direct one, the direct link you're talking about. But I think my sense was you're talking about some more indirect links. Like you're talking about things like how students are encouraged to do various things according to their creative inputs and in almost any activity they do. So it doesn't have to be an incubator where they're doing it. They can incubate their ideas without there being an incubator. And I think that's what you are referring to. And I think that's an excellent point that you make, Ritvik. And I think all educationalists should be aware of it. That actually brings me to my next question to Ms. Rupa, which is that You said that students are doing a lot of activities in their school, which kind of nurtures their creative tendencies. But can I probe further into, is there your view of how we can, at the student level, when they're in high school and senior high school, how do we ensure that they have some idea about the impact of technology on life and careers? I think I know that you have very strong views about the fact that the world outside is becoming a digital world, and students have to be prepared for it. So, is there what are your views on that, Ms. Rupa? Technology is changing everything. How do we kind of meet that at the school level?
Yeah, technology is now the way forward. I mean, as far as, for example, thing like coding. Coding is not something, that digital literacy and financial literacy, I feel these two things are like reading and writing for students today who have to thrive in this world today. So like coding is something which all students must know across the board. It is not somebody only who wants to become a computer engineer or a programmer, but he must know the basics of coding. What happens with that is that he learns to think creatively, learns to think critically, and he learns to manage resources well, and learns to work in collaboration. So with that, what happens, a different kind of a mindset is generated. So coding is something which we are also encouraging in our schools. We have it across digital literacy from grade 1 onwards, and children are doing that. So even making a normal, maybe if you make a Mother's Day card or an interactive card, that can be a platform for other things as well. And since all walks of life now are not only touched by, but they're driven by technology. So having this literacy and this thing is very, very important. So in our schools, we do have digital literacy at all levels. We have separate innovation classes where the students actually look at different concepts and see what comes out of that, whether it is scientific or mathematical, or even English. For example, a launch of a broadcast channel, that itself is something which is new, which has just happened in our school recently. So we are giving those kind of spaces to them. And another innovative thought which we are going to be projecting soon, is having a tab and let the child learn what is the skill the child needs today. The child does not need a teacher to come and give all the quote unquote gyan to the child. The child needs to have, Google is there, everything is there. They need to read up, be able to make a kind of a flow chart there, and process that information and present it in discussion and have questions emanating from there. This kind of an education is what is needed in all schools, where children start to think on their own. And with this new education policy, which has critical thinking, creative thinking as a way of life, is what needs to be honed. So you give these kind of spaces to the students, as Ritvik rightly pointed out, and let them explore where they kind of they burgeon, and they find their own individual voice.
If I could,
yes, Ritvik, sure.
My son is 5 years old, and on this coding aspect, fully agree with what Rupa ma'am has said. So, for example, the coding is not just about kind of programming a language, but it's about a way of thinking. It's a way of logical thinking. So, for example, he has a game that he loves called Code Spark. It's actually a way of teaching how to think like a coder, where using blocks, and you can learn how to make functions and make characters move, but through that you learn about loops and using certain kinds of functions. So the way of thinking is more important than what syntax you use. So I think that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to get at, I think, in this session, is that those are the kind of skills that we need our students and our future engineers, doctors, lawyers to develop, and that's what's important. So I'm glad that's been brought out here. To pick up on that further, Ritvik, how do you place what this discussion has been about entrepreneurship and technology? How do you place that in the context of the legal field? What has been your experience, and where do you think this is going? Some thoughts on that, please.
So I think one is really every practitioner who sets up on their own, every person who's founding a law firm is an entrepreneur. And I think the kind of education that they're exposed to also, I think, impacts the kind of entrepreneur they become. So I think the legal education, for example, I think with BMU, you have certain programs in place that will help enable someone to become a certain kind of entrepreneur. So, for example, I think at a very basic level, let's say financial literacy, being able to understand accounts, understand finance, being able to, as an entrepreneur, we always think of entrepreneurs as being these crazy risk takers, but actually entrepreneurs, the good entrepreneurs, are very good at assessing risk and mitigating risk. So when they take a course of action, there's the greatest likelihood of it succeeding because they have done that risk assessment. And law practice is all about, assessing risk and, being able to help your clients mitigate legal risk, right? Legal risk, reputational risk, regulatory risk. So I think there are certain aspects in terms of legal education that tie in very well with entrepreneurship. So I'd say, so one is risk assessment and risk mitigation. The other is communication. All about everything about law practice is about communicating, writing, speaking. But maybe the aspects of communication that can be addressed more, which Professor Nigam, you do so beautifully, and when you write to your students, is storytelling, right? Where you're communicating at a meta level and not just at a granular level. And then I'd say it's really about, I think disciplines like project management, understanding technology, using tools, whether it's something as simple as Excel or, learning to use new technologies. And the last is really kind of leadership and working with teams. All of those kind of elements tie into both the practice of law, because the role of an individual lawyer now has reduced and reduced and reduced. So today, most aspects of legal practice you will do in a team. And entrepreneurship is all about building great teams that can take on big goals. So lots of parallels, and they really kind of tie into each other.
That's fascinating to hear, Ritvik, because these are the kind of qualities that I think are increasingly coming to the fore, but are not being exactly seen as entrepreneurship, right? So you said risk mitigation, communication, leadership qualities, teamwork, and these are qualities that I think are extremely important for any successful career. And I think the emphasis on entrepreneurship and innovation has actually brought that out. So what I hear from you, Ritvik, by the way, and I just wanted to push you a little bit more on that, is that what I hear from you is that those are qualities that are now important in many of the legal domains that you are working with, right? And perhaps because of the kind of acceleration by technology, and technology has changed all landscapes, including the legal landscape. You're saying these qualities are more important now than ever in trying to manage or navigate these kind of legal landscapes. That's I'll take this up a little bit more, but before I do that, I want to go back to Ms. Rupa and ask her a similar question, which is that we've been talking about technology, careers, new skills. Do you coming down into more specifics, do you see an increased interest in your students in the fields of liberal arts and the law, or are they still focused on engineering and medicine?
No, I think there's been again a great mind shift. You see, 3 or 4 decades ago, liberal arts was humanities, and if you took humanities, it was because you were given a kind of a step-brotherly treatment, and you know that maybe you were not very good in mathematics or science, and so you have fallen over to humanities. But I think things have changed tremendously, and we have a number of students who want to major in liberal arts because it kind of and also this awareness, I think, in the people at large, educated people about how the brain works. And again, it's stemming also from that I, that I'm celebrating the I, what works for me. So, you know, things like brain mapping, which part of your brain is more functional, left, or you're left dominated or right dominated. So people are aware of these things, and people are aware of these things, and they are going according to that. So I do have a lot, and the liberal arts, some of the colleges that are giving liberal arts, I think it's a very beautiful courses they are giving, where there is a complete connectivity between all the subjects. For example, philosophy, psychology, geography, English literature, all are under one. The student is taught to see all the connectedness and then apply that knowledge. So to my mind, as I see it, liberal arts and humanities is not very different from science the moment you start applying it. So it is kind of applied humanities now, and which makes it very scientific in its temper. And with that, a lot of social change is possible. So a lot of people are now, children are feeling that they want to be part of the society or a fabric. A couple of years ago, you may ask somebody that what would you want to be? Nobody would say that I want to be the prime minister of the country, or I want to, I want to make a difference in the environment. But now these are the answers you would get. So liberal arts and humanities is very popular, and I think it's rightly taking the society forward.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the very idea of liberal arts itself is changing in some ways.
Yes.
Right? So we are in the midst at the Munjal University. We are in the midst of trying to develop a liberal arts program, and what we are finding is that the breadth and depth of liberal arts itself has changed. The imagination of what liberal arts is has changed, and especially in the light of the new education policy, we see a major confluence between science, humanities, literature, performing arts, and what I think India and the rest of the world is going into is we're trying to challenge that idea that things can be taught in silos, and that we can actually have a lot of really interesting, almost incongruous domains inside with each other, right? And so I take your point that I think in line with what's happening in terms of creativity and what you've been talking about, the I in a child, I think in line with that, what's happening is we are saying you shouldn't be restricted to any one stream or the other, and that you can actually take a bunch of different interesting subjects in different streams and still, and they kind of put that together, and that will actually add to your education. It won't deviate from your education. It will be something, and a value addition to what you're doing already. That's actually a very, very interesting thought. And that thought brings me to Ritwik, because I want to ask Ritwik, yes, we are interested in technology, entrepreneurship, innovation, but if I were to ask you what kind of qualities you envisage in young lawyers today, what would your answer be in the light of what you have been talking about so far? So any thoughts on that, Ritwik?
So I'll put that into two buckets. One is someone who is looking to make a career in the law, and that itself has so many options, both in terms of litigation, the corporate world, academia, policy. I mean, the choices are really wide. I think there it comes down to, let's say, maybe 3 or 4 things. One is it's always great if you are geeky about the law, in some way, right? You have an innate love for the subject or the jurisprudence of it. I know the best lawyers that, they even today, like at night, they'll be like reading some either legal book or case law, and they just love it, right? So I think that inherent geekiness is always great to have. Second is the law is always multidisciplinary, right? You'll find this surname Dubash, among the Parsi community, and Dubash is basically do bhasha, someone who can speak 2 languages. Every lawyer has to be able to speak multiple languages, right? You have to be able to speak the language of society, of humanities, of technology, of science, because whatever you do, the law is always is something that kind of interacts with each of these aspects. So if you have a curiosity about, or to ask yourself, what are you most curious about? And then to build your career on that side. If you're not that curious about the commercial world and financials, build it somewhere else. Build it in an area that you can then combine. You can combine the law and you can combine, that area together. Third is, my dad, when he was talking to me about a career in law, we went to meet a senior lawyer, and coming back, he said, he told me the law has no mistresses or something like that. Basically saying that if you become a lawyer, it is going to take up your entire life. Okay, so he used some phrase like that. So I think inherently the legal profession is a very hardworking profession. Okay, so going down that path means that it takes a lot of commitment of time, of energy, and it's good to know that upfront. And lastly, the law is also very much about people. You're always dealing with people, right? Whether if you're speaking to a judge, if you're working in a team, your clients are people. So it's all about interacting with people, building relationships, and building trust. Because at the end of the day, a lawyer is a trusted advisor. At the end of the day, that's who you
are. Some very interesting points, Ritvik. Actually, some of these things I've been talking a little bit about as well in my letters to law students. One thing I always say is that the law will push you to do things that you earlier may have thought you're not capable of doing. So your reference to hard work and challenging tasks is absolutely 100% right. The other point that you were saying is that it's about people skills. That's an important aspect of any lawyer, and I think that's something that a lot of us should really be aware of. The idea that interpersonal skills are a very important part of a lawyer's portfolio, and I think and it goes a long way in someone's career. And also, and I'm going to quote you on that in the years to come, which is that you need to be geeky about the law. That's an excellent way of putting it. And I tell my students that when they come and when we teach them torts and contracts in first year, and I see their heads drop, I tell them that listen, what I'm trying to do here with you, and I tell my faculty as well, is that we try to look at law as an enjoyable inquiry. Something joyful, something exciting. Don't look at it as a necessary evil that you need to be done with and you go back to your hostel rooms and sleep. And that's a very important point, because otherwise it's going to be tedium for the rest of your life. Right? So it's important that you are, as a future lawyer and as a person who's in the law, passionate about stuff that's going on. In my most recent letter to law students, I said that I take it as 80-20%. 20% of your life is going to be slightly aggravating, tedious. Everyone has to file their tax returns. You can't do anything about that, and nobody has said that they're passionate about filing tax returns. So that 20% of your life is going to be it's going to be full of all those kind of things. And so you got to accept that. But you got to be excited about the 80%. Right? You got to make sure that whatever you're doing, whichever profession you're in, you wake up thinking something. I'll do something about it today. Something new, something exciting. And I think that's a point very well taken, Ritvik, and I will, as I said, remember it and quote it in the years to come. Now coming back to Ms. Rupa, same kind of question that I asked Ritvik. I said we have been talking about technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. Have you seen among your students and also among your faculty members, among parents, any kind of interest, not in the larger kind of things we're talking about, that of course I can see that, but in things like the law or law-related fields? Do students talk about that? Do they at all engage with sort of legal and law-related issues? Do they think of the legal profession as something that they are that's potentially exciting to go to? Have you had any? I just want to see a glimpse through you into what the students think about the legal profession.
Yeah, that's right. So coming back to the choices that the children make, we're still not, it's not a very fluid structure. Still, we are getting into that fluid structure like the international boards where a lot of subjects are interrelated. So here still, I think we are getting into, if you look at the CBSE pattern, we are still looking at, after grade 11, the choice starts and they start thinking about it. But yes, I would say a lot of students do want to join and become lawyers and judges, as they tell me that we want to become a judge in the high court and stuff like that. But I think what is really missing is a kind of a mentoring to these students, which we need to really make them aware that how the profession of law has now undergone a change, and how other like entrepreneurship and IT driven things are a part and parcel of the law. No longer is that McKinsey and McKinsey or some other very big firms. So everyone has changed their tactics. So it is not a God there that if you join this firm, things will be fine. If people are wanting to experiment and do things on their own, and how specialization in their own field. Like I was reading up on law, they talked about document review manager or consultant lawyer, and other things like that. And there are so many other fields. Everything has got a law attached to it, and how you can bring that innovative part of understanding, how you can accelerate that law process is what I think. If we teach our children that, I think that will excite them even further, because otherwise law is again about the huge books and volumes which you have to study. But apart from there are like I was seeing reading somewhere, they said they have this verbal assistant who tells the artificial intelligence, that tells the lawyers that okay, you can negotiate this contract and you can renegotiate this particular contract, and this is the order of negotiation. So if you show them a more integrated approach to law, I think that will be that will spur them even further into choosing this career.
I think Ritvik is just the man for you for this.
Yes.
This is exactly what he does. He does. Yes, I think if you just tell him at any point of time in the day or the night to talk about AI and machine learning and law, he'll do it. So Ritvik, I think we should just ask you that a little bit. How is technology? I mean, give us a few examples, just one or two examples of how technology is changing legal practice. I think that'll be great for our audience to hear and for our students to hear as well. Yeah.
Sure. Right now, there's ODR week happening. Agami is running the ODR week, which is online dispute resolution. And I think that's going to be one example that's going to touch all of our lives, if not already touched. So online dispute resolution is essentially using technology, using systems to be able to resolve disputes much faster, right? So it could be, let's say you have a dispute on your credit card, you have a dispute, consumer dispute, e-commerce, something's happened, So a lot of cases that were going to the courts, these small matters are now being resolved much more efficiently, and it's a great experience for the person involved. For lawyers, and for especially legal entrepreneurs, it's a great opportunity to be able to create these platforms, right? So you have both young and kind of experienced entrepreneurs, both lawyers and technologists coming together to create these kind of ODR platforms. That's one example. The other is a lot of work is happening around applying AI and machine learning to the entire contracts domain. So contract automation, contracts analysis, Rupama, ma'am, like you mentioned, kind of assisting kind of negotiating positions, or even an ODR, based on your profile as a user. So let's say as a banking customer, your data and behavior as a customer will inform the bank about what options they should give you. Are you someone that they want to retain, or are you someone that they don't want? So using data, using technology will kind of then give negotiating positions. So it's combining technology, combining data, in these areas. So there's a lot of exciting work happening, especially in the legal entrepreneurship space, using technology. The Agami website is one very good reference point, which is agami.in. We're closely kind of involved with Agami. And I think what we're seeing is also kind of, in a sense, law is almost becoming like engineering, where if you do law, it can set you up for many careers, both within the law and outside of it. So we have many lawyers who've joined these management consulting firms, folks who do an MBA and then get into business groups as well. There's a very good group called Lawyers Not Lawyering, which has a lot of good materials on this as well, and resources on this. So yeah, it's exciting times, both within the profession and offshoots from it.
Thank you, Ritvik. We are actually coming to the end of our session. So let me take a few questions from the audience and have you people answer it. In fact, there's a question from the audience to me, so I'll answer that, and then I'll give the podium to you people. So, how has BMU changed the teaching methodology in the pandemic? So it's a question, and the answer is that we obviously, like everybody else, we have gone online. And we use various online platforms, a variety of online platforms, including Zoom, but not just Zoom, other platforms as well, to teach students. But that's just the beginning of it. I mean, in addition to that, we have to actually change the way we teach online completely, right? So we realize that student interest and student passion in learning is more challenging in an online era. So what we have done, therefore, is that we have improved our feedback mechanism. We ensure that whatever we teach, we do a one-on-one session with each of our students in terms of learning, in terms of trying to make sure that they are following the subject properly. We are lucky in some way that we have a small group. Our law school numbers allow us to do that. To kind of pay attention to our students. We're still finding it challenging. I think online learning environments, there is fatigue. We are now in our second year of online teaching almost, and we know that there is fatigue among all our students and teachers, and that's a daily challenge that we face. But I think what we try to do, therefore, is we try to make sure as much as possible that there is more feedback, more interaction, more back and forth between the teacher and the student, just to make sure that that happens a lot more than before. What was happening naturally as a result of being in the same physical space has to be created in some ways, an artificial way, in an online space. So that was my answer to that question. Now I'm going to just go through some of the other questions here. One question was, which skills are required for me to become a good entrepreneurial lawyer? I think Ritvik answered that question quite in a detailed fashion during one of the questions that we had given him. Is there anything you want to add to that at all, Ritvik? I know that you said, look, we are looking for people with good communication skills, good people skills, an ability to take risk and responsibility. So is there anything else you wanted to add to that? The question is, which skills are required for me to become a good entrepreneurial lawyer?
Yeah, and I think we went through those skills, but I think the biggest skill is really what Rupa ma'am also was talking about, which is the learnability. Just having that agile mindset to be able to learn new things and to be able to adapt really well. Yeah, I'd say that's really the key. And the other is kind of, I think, the mindset of not accepting the so-called boundaries that are given to you, like not staying in your lane, right? So to kind of look outside and say, listen, how can I reshape this to get to where I want to go? Or so I think just fundamentally kind of, I think just building that muscle.
Very interesting, actually. Ritvik, I'm going to be in touch with you much after this session. Taking up on all these kind of intriguing statements that you have made. I made a list already here with me. So, you have many months of repeated questioning from me in the years to come. Ms. Rupa, one interesting question for you, which I find. I have thought about it as well, and I'm thinking, I don't know if there's an answer to it, but I would love for you to take a shot at it. The question here is from a student, presumably. The question is, well, we've been talking about all these qualities, but how do I identify that I have these qualities? And therefore I can become, a lawyer at the end of it. Is there an answer to that?
Are you speaking specifically about being a lawyer, or are we generally talking about all the communication and leadership and everything?
Yeah, I think this student was talking about it in general. So the question is, how can I identify that I have the required qualities? I don't know what he means by required. Probably he's looking at humanities and lawyers, but he's saying, how do I identify that I have the required qualities? Yeah.
I think here the schools step in greatly because they are the ones who are really going to formulate and craft you into those kind of individuals. And the qualities that we have just discussed are, I think, across the board. They don't really only for law. You have to be a good communicator. You can be in any field, even if whether you're a doctor or a scientist or a shopkeeper or whatever. You require good communication skills. You require how to handle human beings and human resources. You require good management skills. You require good. So the point is that as you go through your education system, you integrate and engage in all the opportunities that come your way. That is one thing. I think just taking on the opportunities headlong is something which should be a part of your personality. And the more you do it, the more you will discover yourself. So the idea is about discovering yourself as you go along. And there isn't any, there are no these coaching centers are not going to make you leaders, with all due respect and all of that. It is you, as you engage into all the opportunities that come your way, you seek those opportunities. Have no boundaries, like Ritvik said, and go ahead and, just engage. I think that is what will bring out your personality as leaders, as communicators, as innovators, as risk takers. And you will learn through failure, and all of that will happen. But at the end of it, I think only good and, substance can come out of it.
Thank you very much. I think if anybody has any more questions, could you please either type it here or let me know otherwise. So I'll just end with one. So I'll just end with asking Ritvik one question. I think we're almost come to I think we're out of time. So just one. I think you can have the last word, Ritvik. So the question, Ritvik, is if I were to ask, if you were given an opportunity to talk directly to a student over old people like me, and saying, listen, don't talk to the professor. Let me talk directly to a student. What would you tell him or her about choosing a career or looking at what to do when he or she leaves school?
So I'd say 2 or 3 things. One, try and experience kind of different paths, even in small ways, like whether it's a small internship, small project kind of exercise. There's nothing better than experience something for yourself, and that will give you a sense of, is it something you like, don't like. Having clarity on what you don't want to do is a gift. It helps you eliminate choices. That's number one. Second is there's a very useful technique called informational interviews. So if you're thinking about, let's say, becoming a professor, speak to Professor Nigam and understand what it's been like to walk down that path in every way, kind of the frustrations, the good, the bad. What does it take to kind of reach the zenith of that path? So I'd say these two things. Rupa ma'am? Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to, there's one very interesting thing which we done during the online year. We had this something called Global Career Awareness Program, where I actually, got my old students who are already, like, somebody is an engineer in Google and somebody is an aeronautical engineer in the US or somebody. They came online and spoke to our students here and gave them the path, and said that if you want to reach there, then how do you do that? And the children can identify with somebody who's just about 6-7 years older to them, rather than somebody who's cross 40 and 50 like us. So I think that's a very important experiential understanding which we can give our students in all walks of life.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
And the third thing I'd say is, don't overstress it. Like Rupa ma'am said, you will have multiple careers in your life. So your starting point doesn't need to be where you end up. Right. So it's okay. Like, you don't have to, put too much on that decision, as long as everything else is in place. So
that's fantastic. I've really enjoyed my time with both of you today. I've got lots of insights that I actually normally would not have associated with entrepreneurship and innovation. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming here and talking to us. And I'm sure our students who listen to this session would have found it exciting and interesting. Thank you once again. And thank you for the audience as well for their questions and for listening to us. Good day to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.